Hello and welcome to Your Employment Matters. I'm Beverly Williams and I'm here to help you navigate your career. This is for anyone who's searching for their dream job or promotion, or perhaps you're just looking to hang on to the job you have. Today's work environments are multi-generational, multi-religious, multinational, multiracial, and multi-gender identity. Add market disruptors like Amazon and Lyft, along with the addition of AI, and it's easy to see why finding and keeping a job is such a challenge. Employment success and even employment survival depend on your ability to adapt. That's why my goal for this 30-minute podcast is to first advocate embracing change and differences, and second, to encourage you to proactively assume responsibility for your career. Get your work week off to a good start by listening to Your Employment Matters every Monday. Find out how to own your career and get the best practices for making your employment matter. Hello, everyone. Today, my guest is Kevin Eikenberry. Kevin is a business consultant whose official title is Chief Potential Officer. Kevin leads the Kevin Eikenberry Group. Now, for me, at least to me, significantly, the first sentence of Kevin's online bio is this, because it's still there. He is, quote, a proud husband, father, son, and leader of a remarkable team. And remarkable is capitalized, the first letter, the R. So optimist, and that's capitalized too. I don't know whether that's a club or he's just heightening the fact that he looks for the bright side of everything. Entrepreneur, reader, and learner. Now, that one sentence at the beginning of his bio conveyed to me that people in his life are the most important thing to him. And you don't see that in every executive's or entrepreneur's bio. So that really was what made me want to learn more about Kevin, because that's a special person. When you know that the people, not only family, but extended family, are so important and they are focal aspects of your life. Now, I'm going to leave it to Kevin to tell you about himself because he can do it so much better than I. So, Kevin, first of all, thank you for making time to speak to us today and share your wisdom. But before you tell us about your journey, your employment journey, and how you got from point A to point B, please tell me, what does a Chief Potential Officer do?
Well, thank you, Beverly. So Chief Potential Officer is the title. When it's your company, I figure you can call yourself anything you want. And I wanted to pick a title that meant something to me, that I thought conveyed something important, and that would get people to ask me that question, which happens on the regular. So in other words, I wanted it to be unique. If there were no other people in the world who were named Chief Learning Officer, that's what I would pick. But since that's taken, I've called myself the Chief Potential Officer for a long time. And Beverly, I believe that that's the business that we're in, is helping people see their potential, helping people reach their potential, mostly leaders. But the best leaders are those who see potential in others so that they can help enable that to come to pass. So that's why, in terms of knowing more about me, like you already hit the highlights. My team is spread out across the United States, and we do the work of helping leaders get better so the world can be a better place. And we do that through, I do keynote speaking, we do training, coaching, consulting, and I write a lot as well. So there's me.
Well, everyone's not cut out to be a leader. Many times, at least in my experience, I've worked with people, I've met people who want to lead just so they can be in charge.
Yeah, but that's not leading.
Well, no. I said just so they could be in charge. I didn't say they were leading. I said they wanted to be leaders so they could be in charge because that was their perspective. But to your point, that does not a leader make.
Well, there's capital L leader, which is I've got a position. And there are a lot of people that aspire to that position for a lot of reasons. And
yes.
And some of those reasons are that we've been told, many of us, certain people of my age, were told that that's what success looked like, that you moved up in an organization and you moved positionally up. And I think there are people that over time that have aspired to that, even if they didn't necessarily want it. Like I know lots of people that would really prefer to just be an individual contributor, but aren't, right? So I think that's part of it. But there are also people who want it for what I call the power grab, which is, I think, sort of what you were describing. But leadership isn't a noun. It isn't a job title or position. It's a verb. It's a set of actions. And so when we talk about leadership, we can talk about the position. And there are certainly people that have the position that are leading. But we could also just talk about small L leadership or people who are leading without the title. And ultimately, you're only leading if people are choosing to follow you, Beverly.
And you may be leading and not even know it.
There's that too. You could call that accidental leadership.
Well, it's almost symbiotic. It's like because of the closeness of the people and the bond that they have and the fact that maybe one of them gives better advice than others and people come to rely on that person is a leader too, and they may not even be aware that they're leading. They may not even be aware that they're influencing.
Right. If people are following your advice, wise counsel, example, etc., then you're leading, whether you realize it.
But you may not even know that because they may not even tell you that they followed your advice. There are all kinds of possibilities. So I understand the potential aspect of your job, of your title, but everyone doesn't realize their potential for any number of reasons.
Sure.
Because they're not motivated enough to achieve the potential that's within them. And to your other point, they may only want to be, and I say only because it's one person, an individual contributor. And they have that real value too.
Yeah, so potential, it doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to become a leader. It means using their skills in ways that make a difference for themselves and for the world. And so that isn't about a position at all. I mean, it happens to turn out that we spend a lot of our time working with leaders, but potential doesn't necessarily mean that, right? And so I would probably use a slightly different word than you used. Rather, you used not everyone's motivated. That's true. But I think the word that to me is more helpful is not everyone makes the choice. Not everyone makes the choice to say, I'm going to work to grow. I'm going to be diligent and thoughtful and resilient and 100 other things, that it takes for us to move in the direction of our potential.
Yeah,
so
I'm going to do the work.
I believe that 95% of people want to do good work 95% of the time. Not everybody, not every day, but most people. And it's our job as a leader then to help them to find what great work is, which might mean including helping them continue to raise the bar for themselves about what great work actually is.
But some people are not willing to put in the work. I mean, to your point, it's a lot. It's ongoing. It sometimes may even take sacrifices that you didn't expect or you're not willing to make. And that's okay. As long as the end result you're satisfied with. And I think people get ahead of themselves sometimes. They want X, but they don't know what it takes to achieve X. And when they find out, they still want X, but they're not willing to do the work to achieve X. Getting from point A to point B wasn't what they thought it was going to be.
Well, that's life, right? I mean, none of us can really know what that's going to be. And sometimes things come maybe a little easier than we thought, but oftentimes the opposite is the case. There are forks in the road and there are unexpected events and there are consequences and dominoes that fall that we didn't realize would fall and all those things. And I would agree with you. Not everyone is interested in, willing to, or I would even say has the confidence to stay on the path.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but I'm sure that you're right, because depending on who the other people are around them, what do they call it? Imposter syndrome or lack of self-confidence or whatever it is may hold them back. They're holding themselves back, but it's those kind of thoughts that impede their forward moving progress.
For sure. If we don't believe or think that we can achieve something, we are far less likely to try it. I mean, that's sort of a profound truth. And so I think we often recognize when our confidence has helped us, but we often underestimate the power and importance of confidence in general. And as leaders, that's important for us ourselves, but it's also important for us to think about that as it relates to how we can have a positive impact on the confidence of others.
Yeah. I try to keep up with what's going on in employment and in business. And when I saw a few, I guess last year before, the Great Resignation, and I was like, what is that? And when I read about it, and I said, employees think that they have control, that they can just resign and they'll be okay because they don't like the job they have for whatever reason. I don't understand that. And then I realized it was because of what they were hearing on television and in the media. Oh, employees are in charge now. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. And I'm thinking to myself, unless you're curing cancer, we're all disposable. We're replaceable. You need to understand that. And that's part of my dilemma, getting people, especially young people, but more experienced people as well, to understand that you have some power. You have control over yourself, for sure. But your power in the workplace is limited, but you have to create for yourself, whether you want to be a leader or not. You have to create a situation where people see your value and value what you bring to the table. And that's not always the case.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember that there's a limited number of things that we have control over at work or anyplace else. And that is ourselves. What we do, say, think, feel, and choose is basically what we have in our control. But there's a vast number of things that we could potentially influence. There's an equally small list of things that are completely out of our control and influence. Usually people say, well, that's out of my control. The important question is what's outside of our control and influence? Well, what's outside of our influence is the weather and gravity and time and our genetic makeup. Like, there's not a lot of stuff that's outside of our ability to influence. And yet so many people only want to say, well, control, and then there's everything else. But there's a huge amount of stuff. Like, can we control that people see the value we bring to the workplace? No, but we can have a tremendous influence on whether they do or not. Right. And there's a big difference between just saying, well, that's not in my control, and saying, well, I could influence that. What can I do, which is in my control, that might start to have influence on that? But influence doesn't mean a guarantee. It means we've got to work at it. It means we might have to try something different. Back to our earlier conversation, we might have to work on building relationships with people we hadn't thought we needed to do. We might need to say we're sorry. We might need to do 100 things.
See, and that's the point. I think social media has contributed to people not realizing the benefit and the value of interpersonal exchanges, live, interpersonal, face-to-face connections, networking, as it's called, putting yourself out there, meeting people who may not look like you or think like you, but who may be working as a volunteer, and you volunteer, and that's an opportunity for you to learn about perhaps someone from another country, learn a new language, perhaps not proficiently, but so that you recognize some numbers. We're so insular and isolated that I think we deny ourselves experiences that will enhance us as people, as individuals.
We went through, you and I are having this conversation live almost exactly 5 years after the world went on lockdown, right? We're just a little over 5 years since that, as you and I are having this conversation. And there's so much that we can take from all of that. And there's so much that about the world and the way people think about work that has changed because of that. But I think that you use the word insular, and it's a really important word here, that in many ways we weren't able to be face to face for a period of time. And we used tools like things on our phone to help us get some of those emotional and psychological needs met when we couldn't be out with other people, perhaps. But we did that long enough that for many of us, it became the new habit. And we all know how hard it is to change a habit. So we can rail against people for saying that, or we could blame social media, but we could also just say, hey, if that's not serving you, it's time for you to think about changing or creating a new habit or adding to, supplementing, right? We could have obviously a long conversation about social media, and if that's what we chose to do. But I think that at the end of the day, rather than thinking about that societally for any of you listening, it's think about that for you. Like, is that serving you or not? And if it's not, what would serve you better? And that might include, as you said, Beverly, putting yourself out there, being a little more willing to be face to face, as opposed to being in the same room with people and texting those people. Instead, why don't you talk to those people, right?
Right. And if you're looking for a job, especially, don't rely on social media. You may have to get out and meet people so they can be impressed with you and how you present yourself. And they will want to help you. That's the objective. Make them want to help you, or to think of win-win situations. It's not just you need a job. That's your focal point. But you've got to think about what can you do for the employer? And if you can combine those to create a win-win, you're more likely to find a job.
Well, and you're actually way better off to focus on the needs of the employer, right? And knowing that if you meet their needs, then yours will more likely be met. And in fact, so both are true, to your point, are my needs and the needs of the employer. And if we'll put the employer first, it seems ironic or paradoxical to think about it that way. But ultimately, if you think about it from an influence perspective, you can't make them hire you. You want to help them make the decision to hire you. So focus on them. And if you do that, you're in a far better position. Let's say that you wanted to date somebody. Like, spending all of your time talking about yourself is probably not the best strategy. Your best strategy is to be focused on them. And chances are you know that.
Yes.
Finding your next job isn't any different than that. Well, it's different in some ways, but in that way, it's not different at all.
But when you're unemployed and you don't know where your next check is coming from, your focus is going to be on yourself. So what I say is try to create a win-win. You know what you need. Find out what they need and say, this is what I've got. This is what you need. This is how I can help.
Yep.
I can make your job easier. I can make you look good.
No, I agree.
But that's not the mindset of most people who are unemployed looking for a job. So how did you get from where you started to where you are now?
Well, where I started was that I worked for a major corporation for about 8 years in several jobs. And then I left to start the company that's now called the Kevin Eikenberry Group. So I did a lot of things during that time that I was there that helped me figure out what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life. And then made choices to get ready for that, at least in part. And then made a choice on it wasn't like I wasn't offered a package. I wasn't let go. I consciously said, I'm going to go. And lots of people said, well, why don't you wait? There'll be a package. There'll be a this, there'll be a that. Like, no, now's the time for me to do this. So that's the choice that I made. And that was, Beverly, that was 31 years ago. So when I started, it was, the company of one, right?
I know the feeling.
But we're far from that now. We got a team of folks spread across the United States. So that's the path at the high level. And it ultimately, as we said earlier, at least for me, it all comes down to choices, the choices that we make. and being intentional about those choices. And that doesn't mean that they're always going to go right or well or perfectly. But when we realize that choices are ours, it puts us in a much better position mentally and emotionally to be successful, even if it messes up for a while.
How do you and your team achieve a work-life balance?
Well, you'd probably have to ask my team how they would say that, or how they would say I support that. But what I try to do is model it. I'm not a big fan of that word. I mean, I know the question that you're asking me, and I will answer the question. But I'm not a big fan of that word, because the word balance tends to imply for people that there's a place, like there's a right answer here. And there's not a right answer here. The answer is different for everybody. The answer is different at different times of the year. So today, Beverly, as you and I are having this conversation, it's one of my favorite days of the year. It's the start of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Yes. I'm a huge college basketball fan. So work-life balance for me is the ability to know that I'm going to shut things down a little bit and I'm going to watch basketball. That's a choice that I am able to make. Now, will I have to get up earlier tomorrow morning probably to do some things because of that? Yeah. Now, does that make tomorrow look balanced? Well, it might not to some people, but the choices that I make help me create what I want in all of that. I do the same thing on vacation. If I'm on vacation, I'm not only doing my work, but I'm leading a team, and I do a lot of writing, and we have newsletters and all that sort of thing. So there are times when I'm on vacation and I'll get up before anyone else on my family or whoever I'm with to do what I know I need to do for work, so that I can be there for everybody else and not impact them any more than I have to. Now, that might not be what defines work-life balance for somebody else. It works for me. So my challenge to all of you is to find what it is that you want from that, and have clarity with others in your life at work and at home about that. So for my team, one of the things that I think they would safely say if they were here rather than me is that they know they have the flexibility. If they need to go have a doctor's appointment, they can go take a doctor's appointment, and they can do whatever they need to do. And if it's someone that's customer facing, we have a way to make sure we got those things covered, and yet everyone can get those needs met. So I think we all need to figure out what works for us, but we need to start by figuring out what we need, and then try to craft our work around that as best we can.
I think it's important, of course, each situation is different, but each individual needs to realize that it's their responsibility to come up with the solution.
It's not the company's, it's not your employer's job to figure out your work-life balance.
If you have to go to the doctor, you have to go to the doctor. Now, if the doctor tells you during a doctor's visit that you have to go into the hospital and you were planning to go see a client, on the way to the hospital, you should call somebody and ask them to go and see the client.
Or call the client and say, I can't do it today, or whatever it is, right? Exactly.
So-and-so was coming, but so-and-so's on the way to the hospital. The client will understand that. But if you do nothing, and some people become overwhelmed with what confronts them, and that's what their focus is on. We have to assume responsibility for our employment. I mean, however you look at it, it is our responsibility. And to your point, the employer has some responsibility, but not to create a work-family balance for each individual employee. That is not sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a perfect world, and I know many of you may say, well, I'm not in that world, Kevin, and that's okay. But the perfect world is that there's a conversation that you're having as an employee with your boss about what are the expectations here? But what are the expectations about answering emails on the weekend? What are the expectations about what happens on vacation, or whatever those myriad of things might be, whichever ones matter the most to you? What are those expectations? And if they are far out of your bounds for what you want from your work-life balance, then you say, okay, I'm going to stay in this role for a season while I find another spot But see, you can't just make that decision until you're clear about what it is that you want. Otherwise, you say, well, I don't like this. But figure out what you do want. And if what I've got now isn't that fit and I can't influence that to change, then I'm going to stay here and be focused here while I'm finding the next one that moves me closer to that balance I want. Now, again, in a perfect world, there's a conversation with your boss or with that organization so that you can create something that absolutely works for everybody. I know that may not be the case, but that doesn't mean throw up your hands and complain. And it doesn't mean leave immediately. It means use that as a spur for you to think about how you want to craft and find the next role that comes closer to the balance you're looking for.
And hopefully you'll find it and it'll be what you think it is or what you thought it was when you accepted the offer. You know, the grass is not always greener, as we well know.
Here's what I can promise you. If you have a clear picture of what that is that you want, you've got a far better chance of finding it.
But how many people have a clear picture?
Well, that's why we're having this conversation, because that's why they learn from you, so they can learn that, hey, maybe that's what I need to take from this conversation.
No, that's just it. See, I willingly admit that I don't have all the answers. I know a lot because my employment journey has been quite eclectic. But I know that I need to talk to people like you and the other people, the other 100 people I've interviewed during this podcast. And I am just shocked by some of the, I've written down things. I'm going to write this down because my intention, and of course I'll get permission, but I want to write a book based on the podcast interviews that I've had. You would not believe it. 2 Pulitzer Prize winning Pulitzer Prize winning journalists, a rock star, the head of a ballet company. And they're from all over the country and some from other countries. And their perspectives and their stories are so not only interesting because they're that, but they're useful. They have nuggets of useful information that if you adopt might benefit you. The former NFL player's story, I had to ask my publisher because they gave me a page limitation. And I said, okay, I need more because this story needs to be in here. He stepped outside his comfort zone and turned his life completely around for the better.
That's awesome.
And who does that? Everyone doesn't have the courage to do that.
Well, it's my hope that people that are listening because they want to build that courage. And I'm hoping, and I believe that if they're listening to you regularly, they're getting the input to help them build their courage and their confidence to try. And, we don't have to try the biggest things first. And we also don't have to compare ourselves to others. But what we can do is use those stories of others to encourage us to try.
Exactly. And nothing beats a try but a failure. If you don't try, of course you fail. You haven't put forth any effort. And you don't net anything but frustration and disappointment. You're not going to be satisfied because you didn't even try. And you know what I have to do? And I've told this story before, but an offer was extended to me and I just couldn't deal with it. I couldn't. The timing was horrible. And I said, no, I'll just say no, forget that. But then I thought about what I wrote in my book. Recognize opportunities when they present themselves because they may not show up again.
Yeah, the door might close and get locked.
And I said, oh, I've contacted the people. I told them that I wanted to give their offer the thought and the time and consideration that it deserved, but I couldn't do it now. Could they give me another 6 months? And they did. And I said, it works. No, I can't say no one was more surprised than I, but if you don't at least try, you won't know.
Well, here's the thing. if you'd already told them no, you didn't have it. So if you asked them for an extension, I don't know the whole story, right? But if you ask them for extension and they say no, you are in exactly the same place. But if you ask for the extension and they say yes, well, then the door has remained open to that opportunity, whatever you decide to do.
Exactly.
Later.
And you know what? Now that you mentioned that, I don't even know whether I told them I wasn't going to do it.
But in your head, right? But to the point of someone else using your story, like if you're afraid to ask the follow-up question, if you ask the follow-up question and they say no, you're in exactly the same place you were before. Right. You've lost nothing. That's the point I was trying to make.
Absolutely. But if you don't try, you get nothing. And you know you get nothing. You'll never know whether you would have gotten something if you had extended yourself, if you had made the request. Sure. It's just, I don't know. That was off-putting to me because I was like, you stupid person, you need to take your own advice. You're writing this stuff and you're not. And it was like an epiphany.
But you did use it in the end. So
no, but I did. That's what I'm saying. But I almost didn't. I almost didn't. Beverly. I didn't recognize it. And it really was a golden opportunity. It really was. And I said, things happen the way they're supposed to be, but you got to help them. You got to help them. You got to help them. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners?
Well, one of the reasons I'm here is because I have a new book out. And so I'm just going to mention that very briefly. My new book is called Flexible Leadership, Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. And while we haven't talked about the book, we've talked about two big ideas in the book, two big ideas in the title, uncertainty and confidence. And so if the thought of how do I navigate uncertainty as a leader, big L or little L leader, is interesting to you, I'd encourage you to go to kevineikenberry.com/flexible, where you can learn more about the book, how you can get a copy, get a sample chapter, etc. But beyond that, I have a free gift if you're listening, if I can just say one more thing.
Sure.
Because we've talked quite a bit today about confidence, I created a masterclass about building our confidence and the confidence of others. And we've been selling it for 2 or 3 years. But because if you're still listening to Beverly and I want to give you that masterclass that we sell for $79. And all you have to do is go to kevineikenberry.com/gift. And if you go to kevineikenberry.com/gift, I'll gift you that masterclass on building your confidence and the confidence of others.
That's great. I hope the listeners are paying attention. This opportunity may not present itself again. You have an opportunity to get a free book that may help you become more productive and more self-assured because you're special, whoever you are. If you don't think you're special, you are absolutely special. And you can do a lot of things that you may not think you can do. You just need to step out. The other thing, Kevin, I was on your website and I saw something looked different. It looked like it had changed since the last time I saw it. But I saw that you've written a book about working remotely. That may be something you want to share with people.
Well, I wrote 3, actually. We wrote a book called The Long Distance Leader, The Long Distance Teammate, and The Long Distance Team. And if you put any of those titles into Amazon or wherever you buy books, you'll find them. The Long Distance Leader, the first edition was written long before COVID. We were finishing the manuscript for Long Distance Teammate when the lockdowns came. We were finishing it. And then we finished the Long Distance Team during COVID. And then just last fall, we were asked by the publisher to do a second edition of Long Distance Leader. So the 3 books are called The Long Distance Leader, The Long Distance Teammate, and The Long Distance Team.
Well, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to buy it tomorrow, but I do want to read it because I think that things have changed so much. We're not really going back 100%.
Yep.
As soon as employers work out their leases, because I think that's really the only thing that's holding them back with letting more people work remotely full time. But they have long-term leases that they've signed, and they're not going to have empty offices. I know that. and their employees might as well realize that.
The world of work will never be the same as it was 5 years ago. Though it will be more complex, it will be more flexible, it will be different. And both employees and employers need to figure that out. And the dance of figuring that out together, those that figure that out, that dance out together will come out in the end up front.
Well, I would agree with you, but for the fact that the dance may change yet again.
That's why it's a dance, right? The dance, we need to continue to adjust. So yeah, I think we're actually in agreement that
exactly
we're in a dance and the dance is not ending. The music is still playing.
It's not a waltz. It may turn out to be the boogaloo.
I just hope it's not a break dance because I can't do that.
Whatever they're doing today, you can't be resistant to change. You have to go with the flow. That's the biggest. I try to get people to understand that, if you can't change it, you've got to figure out how to deal with it. And when I say deal with it, I don't mean negatively. I mean, not so that it creates a hardship for you or it creates angst. You have to accept what you can't change and come up with a way for you to get through it without causing yourself any harm.
Agreed.
That's my advice for the day. But Kevin, thank you so much for taking time today. I appreciate it. And listeners, there's a wealth of information. You want to give I think it's KevinEikenberry.com.
Kevin Eikenberry. I'll spell it for you. It's KevinEikenberry.com. And if you can remember how to spell my name, you can find me online. We're everywhere. And so if you're
wait a minute. I thought your last name was Eikenberry.
Nope, Eikenberry. Nope.
Why do I have this? I am so sorry.
It's okay.
I
have been called way worse, Beverly. See? I did it too. We both did it. So I've been called way worse. I promise you that, Beverly.
I had my cheat sheet. I had it 2 different places. And I asked you if so-and-so was a relative. And
you did.
I have to slow down. But thank you so much. I've so enjoyed our discussion.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Until next time. And listeners, I don't know who I will be interviewing next, but I have an idea. Be prepared to take notes. Until next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. I truly appreciate your support, and that helps other listeners find the podcast. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, you can reach me at baWilliams@youremploymentmatters.com. My book, Get the Job Done, is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Please join me again next week. Until then, remember to embrace change and differences.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.